B'shut Ma'alat Harav, B'shut Kal Kadosh. I see that there's a title to tonight's shiur, something to do with Mazal. I don't have the answer actually to that question, but it was a clever idea. Actually, I had prepared shiurim this week to deliver wherever I was speaking. However, because of the current events that took place in Eretz Israel over the last couple of days, I had to make a diversion, and I felt that we need to go back and talk a little more about the galut that we're in, and we need to look at it from a perspective of Torah. I know many of you watch the news and you read the newspapers, and that's where a lot of your information comes from, and that's a shame, because the news outlets are telling you what happened, if that, yesterday. I don't want to know what happened yesterday. I want to know what's going to happen tomorrow. And the only place where we can find the future is in the Torah itself. So therefore there should only be one source whenever we're looking for perspective, and that's from Toratenu HaKedoshah. The events of last week were very, very difficult to process, obviously, where we received some of our hostages back in such a gruesome way, in derision, in making fun. Klal Yisrael's glory was lowered to the ground. Nafela ateret roshenu, ki imma os me'astanu. They have a despise and a derision for us, and we saw it on display all of last week. So tonight, if you'll allow me to reveal what I believe is a tremendous hadush, a bigger hadush than I think we ever said. But in order to understand it, we need to go to the source. The source that I want to bring to you tonight is Parashat Lech Lecha. It's a vision that Avraham Avinu had. I don't think I ever spoke publicly about this vision, for the simple reason I really never understood it correctly. And therefore I never felt comfortable to expound on it if I didn't have a true understanding of the pishutan, the pshat of what's going on. Let's read the text together. If you're following in the Humashim, it's Perek Tet Zayin, and it's Pasuk, well, we'll start over here, Pasuk Aleph. So God reveals to Avraham b'machazeh. As is a vision. And he tells him, Al tira Avraham. He tells him, don't be afraid. Now what does that mean when somebody tells you don't be afraid? It means that there's something to be afraid of. But don't be afraid. If you're sitting at Friday night table and you're eating dinner and they bring out dessert, I don't have to tell you, Botai, don't be afraid. Why should I be afraid? I'm not afraid of dessert. Some people should be afraid of dessert. But that would not be something that I would have to warn you, al tira. Al tira means I'm going to scare you, but I'm telling you, don't be scared. So something in this parasha is going to be frightening. But God is telling Abraham, there's nothing to worry about, there's nothing to fear. So it's our obligation to try to find out where is the fear factor in Brit Ben Abetarim. This event is called Brit Ben Abetarim. It's a covenant that God made with Avraham Avinu. And then he tells him, Anochi Magen Lach. Number 2. Anochi Magen Lach means you're guaranteed protection. So no matter what we're going to discuss now, you must know that the result and the bottom line is you have Haganah, Anochi Magen Lach. And you must know that if Avraham is promised Haganah, protection, we're promised Haganah. Because we're the living descendants of Avraham. And that's why we say every single day, B'Shem Malchut 3 times, Baruch Atah Hashem, Magen Abraham. Magen Abraham means Magen Eli Mansour, Magen Harav, Magen Kal Kadosh. We are the children of Abraham. So that's very comforting also. You have to know we have a protection. Now imagine if somebody comes along and says, I secured protection from the police department. Ma'amin ve'eno ma'amin. Who's protecting the police? Arba sarich. Your guarantor needs a guarantor. But if a Kadosh Baruch Hu comes along and says, Anochim Magen Lach, finish, you can sleep well. The third thing he told Abraham was, Al tira, Anochim Magen Lach, Magen Abraham, Secharecha harbe me'od. And you have to know that your reward is going to be great. Now there's Sachar and there's Sachar Me'od. Sachar, maybe you can get in this world, but Sachar Me'od means in Olam Haba. So you're going to be guaranteed a place in Olam Haba, and that also means for us, being the children of Abraham, we are going to merit Secharecha harbe me'od. We're going to merit a place in eternity. That's the introduction to Big Ben Eternity. And now the event, the vision. The next pasuk comes along and says, or a couple of pasukim, Vayomer elav. So Hashem says to Abraham, Kehali egla meshuleshet. What is egla meshuleshet? An egel is a calf. Meshuleshet we learn simply 3. So bring me 3, or not bring me because it was a vision. So he sees in the vision egla meshuleshet. On the floor, on the ground, they were alive. 3 calves. Ve'ez meshuleshet. What's ez meshuleshet? Is a goat. So 3 goats. Ve'ayil meshulash. An ayil is a ram. So 3 rams. Ve'tor. What is a tor? A tor is a type of bird. Very strange. So you have 4 piles over here. 3 of one animal, 3 of a different animal, 3 of a third animal. Now you understand why I don't teach this publicly, because what was going on over here? So I bring to your attention what the Midrash says. The Midrash actually says that each one of these piles represents a form of galut, a form of exile. The first 3 represents galut Bavel. Why is galut Bavel represented in 3 animals? Because Bavel had 3 kings, primary kings. You had Nebuchadnezzar, you had Evil Merodach, and you had Belshazzar. So those are the 3. And then you have the next kingdom, which is referring to Parasumadai. And Parasumadai, so you have, of course, Koresh, and you have Daryavesh, and you have Ahasuerus. So you have 3 kings in that exile. And then in the 3rd exile, which is Yavan, so you have Antiochus the first, Antiochus the second, Antiochus the third. And then in the 4th exile is Galut Romi, which is compared to a Tor. Right? So the Midrash sees in these 4 animal sections 4 exiles. Now I wanted to make it very clear. When Abraham is seeing the exiles, he's seeing everything. He's not just seeing 4 words, Bavel, Parasumada, Yavan, Romi. He's seeing everything. He sees the destruction of the first Beth Medrash. He sees Galut Bavel. He sees the destruction of the second Beth Medrash. He sees them taking the Klei Kodesh from Rome, from Jerusalem to Rome. Avraham Avinu sees everything in between. He sees during the Galut of Parasumadai, Ahashverosh and Haman. He sees in Yavan the desecration of the Beit HaMikdash, the Yevanim. He sees everything. All the pain and suffering of the 4 Galuyot, especially the 4th one, which we're living in now, Abraham saw everything in front of him. He saw the Inquisition. He saw the pogroms in Europe. He saw Auschwitz. He saw Treblinka. He saw Bergen-Belsen. He saw up until October 7th. That means everything was laid out in front of Abraham. The 4 exiles. This is the Mahazeh. This is the vision. And it's divided into those sections. What else did he see? The Pasuk continues. The Gozal. What's a Gozal? A Gozal is a dove. Well, there's no exiles that are left. So who's the Gozal? The Jewish people. The Jewish people are compared to a dove. Like Shlomo HaMelech said in Shir HaShirim, Ahati, Yonati, Tamati. So the Gozal is us. So he saw it in front of his eyes. There's the Gozal, which is the Jewish people, which is a small little bird, against the 4 empires. And the 4 empires are going to have a field day in trying to destroy and to kill the one Gozal. What does Avraham Avinu do? Vayikach lo et kol ele. So Avraham takes all of these animals. Vaybater otam batavech. What does it mean, vaybater? He took a cleaver or an axe, and he cut all the animals in half. Vaybater otam batavech. What is the symbolism of Avraham Avinu cutting them? Says the Midrash, and I have it here. It's actually Pirkei de Rabbi Eli. He says it's a good thing he did that. And I quote, "Vaybater otam batavech, ilule lo batar Avraham, lo haya ha'olam yachol la'amod." That means Avraham said, I need to mitigate the exiles. If these animals are going to come against the Jewish people as they are, the Jewish people will not be able to overcome them. And if there's no Jewish people, there's no world. So therefore, Avraham did us a big favor. He went to Galut Bavel, he cut them. By cutting Galut Bavel in half, it doesn't mean that Galut Bavel is going to disappear. Well, actually, that's exactly what it means. Which means we will survive Galut Bavel, and eventually Galut Bavel will be no longer. There's no more Babylonians. Am Yisrael survived it only because Avraham Avinu in the Mahazeh cut Bavel. And that's why there are no more Greeks. Maybe Greek yogurt you have still today. And you have Spanish olives, but you really don't have those empires anymore. And even the Romans. Today you can go to Rome and visit the relics of the Roman Empire. I once went to Rome with my wife, and I took a tour of the artifacts and all the different amphitheaters of the great Roman Empire that was. Strangely enough, the tour guide is telling us what the Romans did to the Jews and how they destroyed the Jews. And then at the end she said, incidentally, I'm Jewish. So look at the irony. The tour guide that's telling us about the great Roman Empire that tried to destroy the Jews is a Jewish girl herself. That only is because Avraham Avinu cut them in half. So that's a big chesed. Now, I expect Avraham, Isha Chesed, to do anything that he can to make our life easier. So, Baruch Hashem for Avraham Avinu. Vaybater, in lo haya oseh zeh, the Midrash says, lo haya olam kayam. The world will not be able to exist. So it's one of the most important Pesukim in the Torah, what he did over here for us. Toda rabba Avraham Avinu. Continue. And the Pasuk says, Veta sipor lo batar. When it came to the sipor is the bird, is us, lo batar, which means to say, Omdim aleinu lechalotenu, v'hakadosh baruch hu matzilenu miyadam. they'll never be able to break the bird. The bird will always be Hay v'Kayam. And here's the proof, we're still here tonight. All those empires that we talked about are far gone in history. And the little tzipor, the one that was the target of all the empires, has outlived them and has survived them. To credit to who? Avraham Avinu. But the tzipor lo batar. So far, so easy. Now what happens? So now you have a bunch of dead animals on the ground. And one bird that's still alive. Which is a very, very important symbolism. We will survive. And now what happens? Vayered ha'ayit ala pigarim. All of a sudden comes from the heaven an ayat. I don't know what an ayat is. Rashi tells me off. It's another type of bird, but it's more like a vulture. It's a predatory bird. And the ayat comes down ala pigarim in order to devour and to consume the pigarim. The pigarim are the carcasses. Which means the bird now was going to eat the carcass. Now, who's the bird? Who's the ayat? Now, this is a big chiddush because what I'm going to say now is not from the Zohar HaKadosh. Even though it sounds like the Zohar HaKadosh, it's not. And it's not from the Midrash, and it's not from the Gemara. You don't have to go there. It's from Rashi. I don't know how we learned this Rashi in second grade, but Rashi HaKadosh says, the ayat, who David ben Yishai, David HaMelech. Somehow in this mahazeh, David got his nose in. David stuck his opinion in. David's in the Shema. I guess Abraham is watching this movie from Earth and David's watching it from Shamayim. And when he sees the pigarim, he sees the 4 exiles. Says Rashi, David had an opinion. He said, why do the Jewish people need to go through this? I will go down myself, and in my zechut, I will devour the 4 exiles. And if David, which is the ayat, how does the Midrash or Rashi know that's David? I saw Hazal say that regarding David, it says David was very handsome. Regarding David, actually the pasuk writes, "Vehu yefeh enayim v'tov to'ar v'tov ro'i." So they say ayat. Ayat is Rashi Tevot. Ayin Yud Tet is Yefeh To'ar. He has a nice, handsome look. And he has beautiful eyes. So therefore the ayat is David. David wanted to do us a tremendous favor. He saw the pigarim. He says, you know what? For what purpose do you need Galut Bavel to destroy the first Beth Medrash? What do you need the Holocaust for? What do you need all these troubles? This is the greatest story that David HaMelech wants to save us from Galut. Okay, it should end here. And we should say, and fine. Now the Derash begins. What I'm reading you now, to me, is the most complicated words in the entire Safra Torah. And it's for this why I never explained it publicly. Till now, it's easy. Pirush Rashi, everything makes sense. Explain to me what this means now. Vayeshev otam Abram. I know what Avram is, that's Abraham. Otam means them. Maze vayeshev. Huh? No, that's vayeshev.
Brought them back.
Huh?
Brought them back.
No, does not mean that. Hazak Baruch. Hazak Baruch. No, that's it. He said it. Vayashiv means, as she quotes, like it says, Yashiv Ruho. But Olam sends his wind. So Vayashiv Otam, Abraham means that when he saw the ayat, he sent it away. Vayashiv. Now, before I ask my question, I have a grammatical question. How many birds were there? There was one. So why does the pasuk say otam? The pasuk should say vayashiv. Or bird is nekeva ota. Why does it say otam? Baruch Hashem, this question I found that was asked by the Terumat edition in his Perush Maharai on the Torah. I'll get this answer in a minute. But the $1 million question is, Abraham, you're shooing away the ayat. The ayat is David HaMelech. David HaMelech is trying to devour the Pegarim to save the Jewish people from Galut. And you also tried to save us. You tried to cut it in half to make it easier. David has even more courage. He wants to get rid of it completely. Why would Abraham stop that process? Instead, it should say that Abraham Avinu encouraged the ayat, helped the ayat. This is not a dangerous ayat. This is actually a favorable ayat. And Abraham Avinu shoos it away. Go away. By shooing away David HaMelech, you guarantee that the Jewish people will suffer for exiles. Abraham Avinu, it comes out, and I don't want to say this too loud, but the father of our nation, Isha said, it turns out, is responsible now for these Galuyot, because David tried to get rid of them, and Abraham Avinu moved away. Vayashev otam Abraham. Why does he say it in the plural? I read you the Maharai. Vayashev otam Abraham. Tema. Vayashev otah haya lo lomar. דלפי פשוטו של מקרא לא היה אלא עוף אחד. There was only one bird ששמו עית, כתפרש נשי. וגם לפי המדרש, מי זה העית? דוד, which is the Mashiach. ויש לומר, says the Maharai, because in every generation there was a potential Mashiach that came to save the Jewish people from Galut. In the time of Hizkiah was supposed to be the Mashiach. In the time of Rabbi Akiva, there was Bar Kochba. And if you go throughout the generations, there was always somebody that rose. In the time of Shimshon HaGibor, he was supposed to be the Mashiach. And Avraham Avinu Avalav Shalom, he saw all of them. And he saw all the potential Mashiachim that intended to end the exile early. And Avraham Avinu Alav Shalom, he sent them all away. Vayashiv otam, all the potential Mashiachim, starting with David, Hizkiah, Bar Kochba, Shimshon HaGibor. So not only did Avraham interfere with one Mashiach, he interfered with all the potential ones. And I'm asking and scratching my head, Shomu Shamayim Mazal. You have a chance to save your children from Galut. Why would you interfere with such a process? How are we to explain the pasuk, Vayashev otam Avraham? I wonder how you learned these pesukim. I always knew this question, but I never had an answer for it. Until this week, I came across a very important piece of paper right over here. This is a sefer called Tiferet Yehonatan. It's a sefer on Chumash. It was written by a great tzaddik called Rabbi Yehonatan Eibeshitz. I'm going to tell you what he says. He writes, I'll say it outside and I'll read it inside. He says, during Brit Ben Abetarim, Avraham Abinu alav Shalom was given a choice. Multiple choice question. He said the Jewish people need to go through a tikkun. Because of the sin of Adam Rishon of Etz Hadat, the Jewish people need to go through a purgery. There's no free ride. They will get to Gan Eden. Everything will be fine. But they have to go through a certain type of purification. And it's not an easy purification. Avraham, you're the father of your people. You could choose for them. You choose, it's multiple choice. There's only two choices in the test. A or B. Okay. God says to Avraham. Avraham says to God, what's A? A is Gehinam. Gehinam? Yes. If you choose Gehinam, the Jewish people have a very easy existence in this world. There'll be no anti-Semitism. You won't need the ADL. You won't have to worry about college campus. You won't do nothing. Jewish people will be considered equals to all the other nations. But that's not going to bring them to the tikkun. After a Jew passes away, he will need to go through the purgery of Hell, Gehinam, and eventually that will be their rectification. Avraham Avinu says, I don't know what Gehinam is, you have to show it to me. Obviously Hashem shows Avraham Avinu what this Gehinam is. Fine, okay, what's option B? Option A is a terrible option. Maybe option B is better. B, he shows him the four galuyot. Option B is Gehinam ba'olam hazeh. You'll get Hell, but on earth. But if you get it here, you really get saved from the other, and the Jewish people will reach rectification by and large, and from there they can go to paradise. Now you understand why God tells Avraham, Al Tirah, because the options that I'm giving in front of you are scary options. There's no Gehinam, Galut, or none of the above. No, or option 3. It's one or the other. And could you imagine the pressure? Avraham Avinu has to choose for us what he feels is the right or is the better of the two choices. I don't know. Gehinam or Auschwitz. Gehinam or Theresienstadt. Gehinam or October 7th. Gehinam or what we're looking today. To me, that's not such good options. Avraham Avinu was stuck between a rock and a hard place. No matter what he picks, it's not so good for us. I want to read it inside for a minute. He writes, Ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu natan Avraham habechira. God gave Avraham a choice. Or livchor lebanav galut. Either he could choose for his children galut, shavut malchuyot, the kingdoms will be against us, or shirshu gehinam. Or you take Gehinam. I can ask you a simple question. How does Avraham know what to choose? How is Avraham capable to know what the right answer is? When we were in school, when we would have multiple choice questions, and we didn't know the answer, so everybody has tactics. We also had tactics. You call the teacher over, And the teacher is usually Tamim or Tamima, you know. And you say, can you read the question for me over here? I don't know the question. And she reads it for you. Then you point to A. And you look at her. And she winks, she says, now you know it's B from process of you smile back, very nice. And that's it, you know the answer. So sometimes the teacher, through her or his remazim, gives you the right answer. So says Rabbi Yonatan Eibeshitz, and I quote, "Ve'Avraham Abinu haya navoch, ve'ir Shushan navocha, ve'Avinu Avraham navoch." He was navoch. What does navoch mean? He was confused. You would be confused too. We're confused just reading it. And then he says, "Ve'Hakadosh Baruch Hu yi'atzo libhor galut." God said, trust me, the better option is galut. Gehinam is much more severe. The Ramban writes that 1 second of Gehinam is worse than all the Yisurim that Eov went in his whole entire life, and that's 1 second of Gehinam is worse. So therefore, as bad as you think anti-Semitism is, as bad as you think our blood-stained history is, as bad as you think all that we've endured, especially during the Holocaust, especially during the modern times in Eretz Yisrael, as bad as it is, and it's bad. But God said, it's bankruptcy. And in bankruptcy, you pay 10 cents on the dollar. This is 10 cents on the dollar. Compared what you'd have to pay full price in Gehinam, it's a better option to take the full galot. Now, I say, how about we don't have any of this? It seems that that's not the option. It seems that there needs to be a certain preparation for the Jewish people to fix themselves from whatever avirot. He says it's a da'at from day one. Fine. But there's not an option. I would love it to say, how about we just eat candy and we're going to have a party? And God, you can do whatever you want. We don't need to go. That wasn't the choices. So over here, we understand that Abraham is going to be filled with fear because he has to now point, not for him. He's pointing now, because Abraham did not go through Galut Bavel. He chose Galut Bavel for us, and he chose October 7th for us. This is the great challenge that Abraham had, and that's what the Pasuk says. And I quote, "Vahi hashemesh lavo." What happened now? The sun started to set. Says Rabbi Yonatan Eibeshitz, the sun starting to set represents galut. Starts to get dark. Now, as the sun is setting, Avraham alav shalom can stop the sun. If he says to the sun, stop, there will be no galut, but there'll be Gehinam. So the sun is starting to set, and Avraham Avinu has a choice to let the sun continue its journey, which would put us into the present situation that we're in, or he could stop it. Now, as this is happening, David HaMelech, he has a different derech. He said, no, I see what the galut is. Vayered ha'ayit ala pegarim. So here we have now a mahloket between David HaMelech and Abraham. David saw what galut is, and he saw correct. He saw what the Goyim are going to do to us. And he has such a love, but not any more love than Abraham has. Abraham is Yisha Chesed. So you have a big mahloket amongst the Tzaddikim. Vayered ala ayat. He says, I can't see a million Jewish children die in the Holocaust. I cannot see Biba's children being tortured to death by the hands of these monsters. I can't see it. But David, it's either this or Gehinam. Gehinam is better. The problem is, says the Mefarshim, the one that receives the prophecy gets Siyata D'Shmaya to understand it correctly. This was not a prophecy to David, this was a prophecy to Abraham. And Rabbi Yonatan says, God helped Abraham choose. So when he saw the ayat come on the Pegarim, Abraham had to make the hardest decision of his life to allow the 4 exiles to continue, saving us ultimately from Gehinnom. And that's why the Pasuk says, V'hineh Hashemesh, the Shemesh started to say, V'hi Hashemesh lavo, V'tardeman nafla al Abraham, and Abraham starts to fall into a deep sleep. V'hineh Ema. He got afraid. God told him, don't be afraid. Al tira. V'hineh Ema. And the Pasuk says, V'hineh Ema. Hashecha. Gedola. Nofelet alav. At that moment, the 4 galuyot was set in stone. Ema. Gedola. Hashecha nofelet alav. And the Midrash comes along and says, Ema ze galut Babel. Hashecha, some say Paras Umadai. Gedola Yavan, some switch them around. Nofelet alav, nofelet means the present. It's galut wrong because it's the longest. Nofelet, it's constant. And there you have it. Abraham chose for his children galut. And that's the state that we're in today. But Abraham made a deal with God. And he said, you told me that my children will be saved from Gehinnom. I want a chair next to Gehinnom. And the Gemara says, Abraham sits next to Gehinnom. He sits there. And every time somebody comes up from this generation, and the Malachim prosecute, they want to bring him to Gehinnom, you have to go through Avraham Avinu first. Avraham says, come here, come. You have a Brit Milah? Of course, who doesn't have a Brit Milah? Avraham Avinu inspects the Brit Milah to make sure it's kasher. You can't put him in Gehinnom. And he ships him off to Gan Eden. Which means, Avraham Avinu says, after 2,000 years of persecution, after all that they did, and you're still doing Brit Milah, after 2,000 years, you're still coming to Shiurim. We're not the best generation. But you have to take into consideration what we've been through, what we witnessed. None of us are angry. None of us threw in the towel. All of us come to Shiurim. The ladies, the Shims and Kaniyot, we're all there. The ladies are reading Tilim all day long. Everybody's doing everything. And we're the latest generation. We've witnessed everything. And we're still here. We haven't forgotten you. Avraham Avinu says, God, you made a deal. They get the H-E-L-L over here. You can't give them the H-E-L-L over there. You have to protect them. But they're not perfect. But they got punished here. Every time they open up a newspaper, there's Gehinnom they're getting. Every time they read the news, they have to cry. They become... That was the deal we made. You can't get it both places. I don't think it means that there's not going to be a minimum type of... Of course there has to be. We're not saying... But it's not going to be the Gehinnom that would have been without Galut. The Gehinnom without Galut, we cannot tolerate such a one. Avraham Avinu felt that that's a worse option. But the problem that I have is, so could you believe it? That's you could give thanks to Avraham Avinu for what's going on. And Avraham will tell you, I saved you from something worse. You're paying 10 cents on the dollar. Be appreciative that this is all you have. It could have been worse. See, now brain was saying, it can't get worse. What could be worse than this? Avraham said, you don't know what I saw. The other option, much worse. And anyway, God moved my finger to pick Galut. So I knew that Hashem wanted me to pick Galut. And therefore it's the lesser of the two evils. So when David tried to get rid of it, move away Haskiyah, move away Bar Kokhba, move away Shimshon. Until Mashiach ben David comes at the end, when it's ready, then Avraham Avinu will say, Baruch haba. They paid their price. And by the way, the price is almost paid, that's for sure. But my question is, the Pasuk says, Ema, Hashecha, Gedola, Nofelet alav. It's for galuyot. The problem is, Rav Haim Vital alav shalom, as well as others, Ibn Bahia brings it down as well, they talk about that there's going to be a fifth exile, and we know it. The Galut of Ishmael. And it is clear we are officially in the fifth and final Galut. Actually, if you look at it, it's 5 words. It's Ima, Hashecha, Gedola, Nofelet, Alav. Nofelet, Romi. Alav, Ishmael. Now, what I'm going to tell you is incredible. Harambam talked about Ishmael 1,000 years ago, when they just got, some momentum. So he writes to the Jews in Yemen, not just a safe place anymore for Jews. Harambam is quoting, "Ve'atem achenu, my brothers, egeretema. ידוע לכם שהקדוש ברוך הוא הפילנו במאמרות עוונותינו בתוך אומה זו. God has entrapped us because of our sins in the hands of this nation. שהיא אומה ישמעאל, שדעתם חזקה עלינו. They are over us. והנה מתחכמים להרע. They're always figuring out strategies to do bad for us. ולמאוס אותנו. They despise us. כמו שגזר עלינו הקדוש ברוך הוא ואויבינו פדידים. And then Harambam says, ושלא תעמוד על ישראל אומה יותר אויבת ממנה. There will never be a nation that is a greater enemy of the Jewish people more than Ishmael. ולא אומה שהרעה בתכלית. And there's going to be no nation that does evil to the Jewish people with the viciousness and the cruelty and the ruthlessness of the Ummah Ishmaeli. So Harambam is predicting that's going to be the word. He knows the Germans. He knows Galut, Edom. Now, I'm not coming to advocate for Edom or defend them whatsoever. To me, the Germans look like they were the worst that ever existed. But the Rambam is telling us with his prophetic eyes that there's nobody worse than the Ummah HaYishmaeli. The question is why? When you look at the success that these people have, just over us, did you ever think we're bombing Gaza for a year straight with bombs that are, I don't know, heavy, 10,000-pound bombs dropping on their head, relentless. And they can still shoot missiles over the border? How is it possible? How is it possible that you have an army, you have billions of dollars, and they're shooting? How do they keep on coming back? I don't want to say that they have siyata d'shmaya because that's our item. But such a barbaric people, third world, and they have so much success over the Jewish people that have a formidable government, an army, etc. It's almost as if like some big rabbi blessed them. It's like they went to the Baba Sal. He said, listen, we need a beracha. What's your name? Ishmael. Oh, Ishmael, beracha. Now, if that's the case, that explains it. I know the Germans never got a beracha from a rabbi. But I'm sorry to tell you that Ishmael did. And the rabbi's name is Avraham Avinu. And Avraham Avinu at the end of his life said, or in the middle of his life, said to God, Lu Yishmael Yehyeh. Hashem, please. Ishmael Yehyeh. So that's it. That's better than the Baba Sali. You got to bet. So look, now, when you read these stories about Abraham, you say, whose side you on? You got rid of David, you kicked him out, and now you're going to our worst enemy, and you're telling him, Tasliyah, Lu Yishmael Yehyeh. So he's walking around with the barakah of Avraham Avinu. Now you understand why he's so successful? If you got a beracha, which we did, but he also got a beracha. We also have the beracha. We have the primary beracha. Don't take my word. I know we're saying things that sound But Rabbi Yonatan Eibishit says it. Ki mikoach tefilat Avraham lu Yishmael yihye lefanecha ne'erach memshelet Yishmael ba'avonotenu harabim. So you can thank Avraham Avinu for Ishmael's success. They're going to thank Muhammad, and they're going to thank all their fictitious characters. But we know where their blessing comes from. Lu Ishmael. Now, why would he bless them? Because if they're blessed, then we get more Gehinam in this world, and eventually they'll dissipate. Anochi bagen lach, secharecha harbe me'od. So Avraham Avinu is forcing the process in this world. So therefore we say, Lu Yishmael, let Yishmael be the Gehinam. And then Harambam writes in the next paragraph, and I quote, Uchmo shamru rabotenu, regarding Yishmael, Shehu Kazav v'Shakran. That's amazing. Harambam knew already that the nature of Ishmael, they're liars. They're filled with deceit. I said this in the synagogue over Shabbat, and then Monday morning everybody emailed me the front page of the New York Post. Liars. I said, how did you know? I didn't know anything. The Rambam said it 1,000 years ago when they sent back the wrong body. Intentionally. But just think about the lies of Ishmael. They can attack us, and somehow they can turn it around and make it as if they were the victims of October 7th. And you have nations that want to believe the lies, so you have to have willing partners to want to believe the lies. And then all of a sudden, they have a propaganda machine that they're able to always make themselves the victims. No nation has that koach. As they're returning hostages, but somehow they get away with us releasing criminals. And that becomes logical to the world. Yeah, hostages you have to release. Yeah, so you're releasing dead people, and we're returning people that are killers. And what does the world think? Yeah, listen, the poor people, it's fair. They're giving back everything. Why is that logical? There's such good propagandists and liars, and the world wants to believe it anyway, probably. So therefore, if you come into the United Nations, the only one that was condemned after October 7th was us, the victim. And anytime they said something against Bnei Ishmael, they have to offset it with saying 10 bad things about Bnei Israel. Because the guy from the United Nations, the Palestinian guy, gets up and he cries in front of them, and he says the hospitals and the children and the batich and all the other things. And everybody says, oh, you can't do that, innocent people. And you have people crazy running around the streets. Harambam writes, what's going to happen when we hear their lies? Ishmael had 3 children amongst many. 3 children were Mashma', Mishma', Duma, and Masa. And the Gemara says, Mashma', when you hear the lies of Ishmael, our only reaction is going to be Duma. Duma means Dom, just keep quiet, and Masa, you're going to have to tolerate until the end of time. We have a Tehillim book over here. I'll show you something from the Tehillim. Yes, Tehillim there? Yeah, quoting Tehillim. Open up chapter 55. Open up, none here. The Midrash asks, why is he called Yishmael? Now, see, I told you, it's not such an easy book to find. Where are the ladies? Ladies don't have Tehillim books in their pocketbooks? On the phone. Shabbat, what do you read on Shabbat? I was like, I knew the lady, she took care of you. 200 men, we can't get a Tehillim book. I was like, we got it. So the Midrash says in Mercaz, why is he called Ishmael? So when you hear that name, it sounds like Ishmael. Hashem's going to listen to him. But the Midrash says, no, there's a word missing. Yishmael li-Yisrael. That means the pain that Ishmael is going to cause at the end of time is going to cause the Jewish people to cry out to God. So Ishmael is going to be the catalyst. He's going to be the impetus. Besof hayamim, Yishmael li-Yisrael. Which is a good thing, and we're living in that time now. Ishmael is involved in his last hurrah, and I don't think there's a Beth Knesset in the world that's not praying extra Tehillim every day and tefillot, etc. So we're now living in the generation of Ishmael Israel. So I said to myself, David knew this also. David was there with Abraham. He was there. He tried to get rid of it. But Abraham said, no, listen, I'm older than you first. And you're not one of the Avot. I'm one of the Avot. Avot have seniority, you have 2 votes. And therefore, and Hashem gave me Siyata D'Shmaya, I'm choosing Galut, and I'm also giving Ishmael an extra beracha. Ishmael. So I looked in Tehillim. Do we ever have in Tehillim the 2 words Yishmael next to each other? Only in 1 chapter. If you open up chapter Nun He, and if you look at the pasuk, Nun He, Nun He, pasuk Chaf, 55:20. It's the only place in Tehillim. Yishmael v'yanem. Also, there's a remez of Yishmael in this chapter. And what does the pasuk say regarding Yishmael? I read the beginning. Yir'ah bara'ad yavobi. We're going to be filled with fear and trepidation. Va'omar, mi yiten li eber kayona. Hashem should give me wings. A'ufa ve'eshkona. That the Baba Sali wrote. A'ufa ve'eshkona. Because he was referring to Galut Ishmael. He said, we're going to want to run away if we could fly. Ahisha miflatli miruach so'a misa'ar. And then David HaMelech says regarding pasuk of Yishmael, which is Perek Nun He, he says, Ki ra'iti Hamas v'riv ba'ir. In the Tehillim that he mentions Yishmael, he mentions them by name. That it's going to be regarding Hamas. And then he says at the end of time, Lo yiten le'olam mot tzaddik. God will not let the tzaddik, which is us, falter. V'ata Elohim toridem le'be'er shachat. But Olam will bring them to a empty pit, a lonely pit, and shedamim u'rima lo yichasu yemehem v'ani yiftach ba. So David HaMelech is telling us the end of the story. That's why it's tomorrow's newspaper. At the end of the day, lo yichasu yemehem. Be'er shachat. Yisrael nosha b'Hashem. But in the meantime, the process has been chosen for us. And who chose the process? We chose it. Not the Goyim. We decided the process. And the pasuk refers to them as pegarim. You know what a pegad is? A corpse. It looks like they're doing something. They're corpses. They're puppets. They're only messengers to God to bring the Jewish people to the ultimate rectification. That's what they call pegarim. They think they have strong, they have army, they have artillery, they have UN. Pegarim. They're puppets. They have no power whatsoever. Finally, a little biology for a minute. The Gemara says that there's a certain animal. The animal is called ayala. Maybe it's a deer or a gazelle. And the Gemara says that it has a very narrow womb. And it's a problem. Because when it wants to give birth, the baby cannot fit through the canal. So what happens? So obviously there's no OBGYN by the Ayala genre. They don't have epidural and all these other things. So Hashem, through the nature, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends a snake that's called Hadroken. And the snake comes exactly at the time that the Ayala is supposed to give birth, not a second before, not a second after, and bites the Ayala. And when the venom of the Hadroken goes into the Ayala, she screams. And at that moment, 10 centimeters. And the baby is able to come out. And the Gemara says, if it would come a little early, it would be premature. If it comes too late, the baby would die. I want to explain to you something. We are involved now in what we call Havle Mashiach. Not always when you hear somebody screaming is it necessarily a bad thing. A lady screams the loudest before the baby is born. The screams of a lady in labor actually are screams of pain, but of anticipation of joy. The greater the contractions become and the closer they become, the closer you are to a birth. We are involved now in the birth pains of Mashiach, and the contractions are getting closer, and they're becoming more severe, and the patient is screaming. But the problem is, the Mashiach cannot fit through the birthing canal. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to send Hadroken. Hadroken is the snake. And if you look at the Hamas emblem on their banners that they wear around their head, it's one of Hadroken, of a snake. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has sent the Hadroken in order to bite Klal Yisrael one more time, in order to make full dilation, so the baby, which is the Mashiach, will be able to be born. This is the moment that we are in now. Our eyes will see. The redemption is very close. And therefore it is for us to take the imunah. Now's not a time to give up. The marathon is almost over. We can see the finish line. On the contrary, when the runner sees the finish line, even though he has no more energy, but he gets chizuk when he sees the finish line. And with the last strength that he has in his body, he's able to stumble over the finish line to the end. Rabotai, I have no doubt. This is exactly where we are in history. We're at the end of the Galuyot. Galut Ishmael is almost coming to an end. The Ishmael Yisrael. The Hadroken has bit us. And now Klal Yisrael is making its last scream with the final contraction. And without a doubt, the Mashiach is coming out of that canal. May it be the prayer that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the Zechut of Avraham Avinu, he should look down at his people. Look, we're still coming to Shiurim. In the middle of the week, freezing cold in the winter. But we're here, we showed up. Even though you did all that to us, even though everything happened. B'chol zot lo shekachanucha. And therefore it is our prayer that Be'ezat Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will tell our, regarding our tzarotenu who die, and Be'ezat Hashem, the birth of the Mashiach, that he's born already, but he just needs one more push in order to bring him out. And Be'ezat Hashem, the pasuk says, Yisrael nosha b'Adonai teshuat olamim, amen ken yiratzon.